everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, after our show intro yesterday went 6 minutes or so, I feel like I just need to say good and we can start the show. So Tony, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Have you seen this Taco Bell Taco Pass, Tom?
I have, in fact. Yes.
No. Okay. All right. Then we can move on.
All right. First question from @2007 MLR. Any predictions on Big Ten / Pac-12 / ACC future scheduling? That, of course, within the scheduling alliance, and that's kind of been rumored, kind of been reported. Scott Docterman of The Athletic kind of floated the idea that the Big Ten could drop to 8 conference games from 9 and then start a kind of Big Ten ACC challenge / Big Ten Pac-12 challenge like they have in basketball. And I the question is always the timing. So I think the first thing we were talking about this before the show, kind of trying to figure this out because there's a bunch of moving pieces, one of which is the Big Ten TV contract ends after this season. So the 2023 season is going to be on whatever the next TV contract is. Speculation is that's going to be CBS and ESPN rather than ESPN and Fox. CBS and Fox, not ESPN. That's sort of the expectation for what's going to happen with the Big Ten TV rights in 2023 and moving forward, CBS and Fox. And, so you would expect that they would probably try and get that in there. And then the question is, so who has space on their schedules that you can do this? Because these, Ohio State has games scheduled for 2031 already. So you're going to have to move some stuff around. And if the Big Ten is cutting from 9 conference games to 8, okay, that solves the issue from the Big Ten's perspective. The Pac-12 also has 9 conference games, which theoretically they could also cut to 8. So then, okay, you solve the issue from the Pac-12 perspective. The issue is more on the ACC side. So the ACC has, if you look at Florida State, for example, in 2023, they already have 4 non-conference games. They already play 8 conference games, not 9. So, and they have their 4 non-conference games scheduled already for 2023. They play LSU, they play Southern Miss, they play North Alabama, and they, as always, play Florida. They're scheduled for 2023. They're scheduled for 2024 with a very similar Memphis at Notre Dame, Charleston Southern, Florida. That's all set. 2025 is the first time they only have 2 non-conference games scheduled. Those 2 games, Tony, Alabama and at Florida. I'm not sure Florida State's looking to add at Ohio State to that schedule, but that's the first year that they could do it without having to really shuffle some stuff around. I think there's a possibility that this starts in 2023 with just a Big Ten and Pac-12 kind of arrangement, and then you sort of mix in the ACC as those games become available, as those dates become available, but that's kind of speculation right now.
And Notre Dame has clogged it up a little bit in the ACC right now. I'm looking at Clemson's future schedules, and they have 4 teams every year already scheduled until 2027.
Mm-hmm.
And that year they have South Carolina and Notre Dame. So like Florida State, I don't think they're looking to add an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Penn State or anything like that. And so that's where some of this, and the ACC schedule is, the TV schedule set out to like 2035. And so, I don't know how much they will factor in right now to what the Big Ten does. I assume that it's going to be part of the package, though, for the Big Ten as they're selling this. They're going to be saying, well, we're going to have non-conference games against the Pac-12 and against the ACC. Because if you're removing a 9th Big Ten game, that's a lot of inventory. So you're going to have to replace that. And I think my assumption right now is that they are going to go down to 8 games. That's really the only way to make this work. But then they also then have to make it work,
mm-hmm.
and not just talk about it. And the ACC has to do something about it. And now if you're the Big Ten, you're just looking to have your schedules filled by 2 conferences, then, half of one, half of the other kind of completes the deal. And the ACC doesn't necessarily, they don't have the freedom that the Pac-12 does to remove a conference game. And the Pac-12 commish, I don't know if it's the current one or the previous one, said that TV partners will probably be fine with them going to 8 games as long as they're replacing it with an ACC team or a Big Ten team. And why wouldn't they be fine with that? I'm sure they would encourage that and certainly not hold up any of the deals. So I would not be shocked at all if in 2023 the Big Ten is playing 8 game schedules, and you're seeing at least a Pac-12 team on a lot of those schedules. Now, I don't know that it's just going to be the open spots are going to be filled by the ACC and the Pac-12 for all 14 teams in the Big Ten. I don't think it's going to be that easy right away. I think there's going to take some more time. But now you've got now you can have Rutgers go out and schedule Don Bosco varsity prep or whatever, and just a free win, something like that, to help them get closer to bowl eligibility, and if they're not part of this right away, and allows those kinds of programs to maybe go buy a win.
And the fun part of this question is then, so who is Ohio State going to play if this does happen? And I wonder. You've had a lot of Big Ten and Pac-12 teams playing each other recently in kind of marquee non-conference games. Ohio State obviously just played Oregon, was supposed to be a home and home, and turned out to just be a home due to gestures vaguely towards 2020. And then Michigan just played Washington. So, you would assume they're going to try and sort of pair up programs at similar levels so that, Oregon State is going to be playing Maryland and Ohio State's going to be playing, say, USC or someone like that. I wonder if they avoid the Ohio State-Oregon thing since they just played, or they avoid the Michigan-Washington thing because they just played. I think I'm going to lay down a marker on, you look at the 2023 Ohio State football schedule. Ohio State is scheduled to open at Indiana on September 2nd. They have, 3 other non-conference games after that. I'm gonna shoot my shot here. Ohio State versus USC, September 2nd, 2023. You get Lincoln Riley, you get Ryan Day to open the 2023 season. I mean, that is going to be a monster TV game. That becomes one of the biggest games of the non-conference season, because you've got to figure that's third year Caleb Williams and versus Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, first year starting quarterback for Ohio State, and is that a home game? Is that a road game? I don't know, but that is my prediction for what happens. I am basing that on nothing more than that would raise some eyebrows in TV boardrooms, I would guess. The Pac-12 team that I most hope, I would love to go see. Ohio State's supposed to play at Washington in 2025, I think.
2024, 2025, they have a Washington series, so that takes care of itself there with the Alliance.
That solves that problem, but outside of Washington, I do want to go see a game in Autzen at some point, so I'm into that. I really want Colorado to get good, because I really want to go see a game in Folsom Field. That is one of my favorite venues of college football. It just looks awesome with the Flatirons behind it. I really want to go see a game there, and hopefully that all sorts itself out. But that I would not guess Ohio State Colorado is going to be one of the first ones to get played.
Well, and Ohio State and Colorado have played relatively recently in the last decade. How about this, Tom? I like what you're thinking with the season opener for Ohio State. So 2023, you take at Purdue off of the schedule. Ohio State doesn't need to go to Purdue anymore. It's too scary. You move that Indiana game to October 14th because that's Indiana's open date. All right. You move that San Jose State week to up a week. So you open with San Jose State so that you're not opening with USC. Or are you just like, no, we're going for the biggest television extravaganza ever, and it has to be, does it open, is it a Monday night? Is it a Sunday night? Is it the thing that you're looking forward to most Labor Day weekend? It's USC at Ohio State, and it's because I think Lincoln Riley is going to get USC in a playoff picture pretty quickly, and that could be a top 5 matchup, I would think. But I think Ohio State would prefer to have, let's open with like Western Kentucky or San Jose State, and maybe even Western Kentucky would be the better opener because it would get you used to all of the throwing.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And as with everything in college sports right now, what does TV want? Does TV want week 1 to be the Alliance Championship Friendship Showdown weekend like that? Because you have this Saturday, obviously you have the Thursday games. They play some Friday, but a lot of Saturday. But then you do have games on Sunday because that's a week before the NFL starts. And then you have that Monday night game as well. I mean, that seems like you could make that the Super Friends Alliance showdown, throwdown, showdown weekend, and just kind of make that the whole weekend where you're just programming that, and it's just a ton of big interconference games. Really, that would be a big narrative shaping weekend. It would also just be a ton of content that's going to get a lot of eyeballs. You put, if they can somehow work the ACC in here, you put Ohio State USC on Saturday
Thursday
night, and then Michigan and Clemson on Sunday night, and Penn State and Oregon on Monday night, and it's like those games are going to do monster numbers, and TV networks are going to pay through the nose for those, and that doesn't even get into Wisconsin and Washington, or Wisconsin and Florida State, or you have so many games that would be like huge national draws. Nothing more than Ohio State USC, something like that, but that would be. I could see them really turning that first weekend into really like a real showcase for this whole event.
I'm looking. Minnesota and North Carolina play next year in North Carolina week 3, so that's also a Super Friends showdown. But yeah, that would be interesting. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Just light it all up. Like you own the weekend, and just hope the games are good at that point, and just hope it's not just. Wah, wah, and just oh no, it's just the humanity of watching 10-7 games and all of this stuff that just destroys the product. But I think that would be awesome. Mm-hmm. I think I'd be okay opening on a Thursday against USC. Camp starts sooner. The buzz for that would be immense. Or I know Gene Smith isn't keen on doing Notre Dame on a Sunday this year, or I'm assuming he wouldn't be keen on it any year against any team. But you got me thinking, Tom. I'm not going to say no to it.
All right, next one from Matt, LBC OSU. Now that Lebbeus Overton has reclassified to 2022, what are the chances Ohio State lands him? I know he was a priority target for the class of 23. Also, who is the main competition for him?
Yeah, Lebbeus Overton, a 5-star defensive lineman from, is it Georgia?
I believe Georgia, yeah.
And it was 2023, one of the top defensive linemen, top players in the class. He classified to 2022, put out a top 5 that included Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas A&M. And I would put Ohio State's chances at slim and almost none. I think he's planning to take 5 officials. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how quickly he's going to be able to get that done, or how he's going to be able to get that done. I guess you can do it in the spring.
I mean, you could be on the JT Tuimoloau plan.
Exactly. And just show up early. But I know I've seen Buckeye fans saying, well, Georgia and Texas A&M, Tom, they don't have any room. They've each signed like 29 guys in their respective classes, 7 or 8 defensive linemen in each class. They just don't have the room. And I chuckle to myself saying, oh, the day that Georgia or Texas A&M doesn't have room for a 5-star defensive lineman will be the day that's not actually a 5-star defensive lineman. And so I don't see him leaving the SEC, and I have no inside information on that other than years of watching Ohio State try to get guys out of the SEC, specifically defensive linemen, who so much of the time they seem to be added on the top 5 just as like, I like the block O. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put that on my graphic. It looks good on the graphic. And then, I may or may not take an official visit. Sure, I'll come up if the weather's okay. But I don't see him heading to Ohio State anytime soon, unless it's just for a visit and then to go back home.
Well, you got to look at it as now the period to convince him to come to your school has shortened. So being in the lead right now is probably more significant than it would have been if you had another, an additional 8 to 12 months to convince him to come to your school. So if you're not in the lead, and Ohio State is widely perceived as not in the lead right now, it sounds like it's kind of Georgia, Texas A&M maybe is kind of the battle. If you're not in the lead, then that just gives you less time to try and win him over. You can't bring him up for a game, of an official over the spring or summer, and then bring him up for an unofficial in the fall, or vice versa. You don't have that. You don't get that extra visit in the fall to potentially win him over. So now you've got to win him over without having a home game. You can't bring him up for the Michigan game, so he actually can see a big game atmosphere at Ohio Stadium. He's going to be here for the spring game, or he's going to be here for a practice weekend, or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think that makes their odds not as good as they could have been if he was still in 2023. So, as Mark and Bill and Alex all will say over and over again, Ohio State knocks those official visits out of the park. So, if you get them on campus, you never say never, because they do such a good job with those official visits. But it is an uphill climb, I would say, for sure, for Ohio State at this point. All right, next one from @JM_Underwood64. I'm just hoping Coach Mick changed up his 2014 strength and conditioning program already, and that's been that has been a kind of consistent criticism, specifically since the Michigan game, where it sort of looked like Ohio State got bullied a little bit. I'll be interested to hear when they get through those February workouts, how much is really different this year, because every year you hear how tough they are, and every year it's the toughest workouts we've ever done, and every year it's they tweet the videos of the mat drills, and then you see the Harley Davidson workout photos at the end of this spring and all that, the end of winter workouts. So I'm going to be interested to hear kind of specifics on that from guys, and maybe we'll get to talk to Mick this year as well. Every once in a while, it seems like it's like every year, every other year we get to talk to Mick. So it'll be interesting to hear from him or from players how much is really different this year, because I think they're going to you kind of have to continue to adapt. You can't that was like the Michigan in the 90s and 2000s had Mike Gittleson, who had been their strength coach since like the 70s, and I think they still had like literally Nautilus equipment in the workout room in like the early 2000s, and it was like this is outdated for the why in your community, and you're using this stuff. So yeah, the technology, the research in that area has changed quite a bit. So I'll be interested to hear how much that has actually changed within the program during those winter workouts as well.
Well, and Mickey Marotti's always been a guy who was always viewed ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, on pace with what's going on in science. And I think the only reason that has changed is because you look for, and when I say you, I think this is just an internet thing, right? In terms of message boards and Twitter, where you're looking for somebody to blame. And so, they got pushed around in the Michigan game, so let's go blame Mickey Marotti. And there's also the, he was one of the first guys that I remember looking at the selfish teammate urine test, stuff like that, like what color is your urine? Like, they were taking it to those kinds of levels with the science and all of the hydration, and you hydrate, so many hours before the game, you eat so many hours before the game, you sleep so many hours before the game, and it's all based on science and performance. And they've got these trackers, these GPS trackers that everybody wears. So it's not like they're just old school mentality or anything like that. It's all new school. I think they just got pushed around, and maybe a little bit. I guess it's okay to credit Michigan. They did have the Joe Moore offensive line of the year. They did have some very good defensive ends. I don't know that it's necessarily a strength and conditioning thing. And like you said, every year is the toughest ever. And sometimes the results also depend on players and schemes. It's not always just strength and conditioning, I think.
Yeah. Next one, @Dale Reinecke. Tony, I'd love to hear someone talk and clarify the roles of the coaches. Who can do what? Who is allowed to be on the field, etc. Sounds like Coy McFarland has a big role with the linebackers. Is Parker Fleming special teams? Anything else?
One of the interesting things Ryan Day talked to reporters last week, Parker Fleming never came up. And, he's still a special teams coordinator. There's so much talk about, like, are they going to keep him? Or are they going to get rid of him for a defensive spot? And I don't know that his name ever came up in terms of, hey, did you think about going with another defensive coach or anything like that? But he has helped with the defense. In terms of the roles, there's a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge here, because all of the coaches, all the QCs, the graduate assistants, and analysts, which are also QCs. It just depends on different, there's only a couple of quality control positions, but then anybody can be an analyst. All of these people are allowed on the field. However, the only people who can coach are the 10 assistants, the head coach, and the graduate assistant coaches. Now, an analyst, QC analyst guy can say, hey, great effort. They can talk to players, but they can't, Tom. They can't say, you got to dip your shoulder and you got to explode through the ball and you got to do that. Now, does that hold true? Like, do analysts coach? How could they not? And it's just a matter of how far do you really want to take it? Because sometimes it can backfire, like it did on Michigan, where they had players come out and say that one of their QC guys was their position coach, and he's got it was a defensive line thing in the past year or so, and so Jim Harbaugh had to put a stop to that because obviously he didn't know that was going on.
Gambling in this establishment.
So you just have to be careful with it, really. I mean, it's a silly rule in a sense. I mean, that you're Paul Rhodes, the one of the analysts for the Buckeyes last year, he was out there at the Rose Bowl practicing right alongside Kerry Combs, but he can't give instruction. He can just give encouragement. And I guess it's like you're running the Ironman or some sort of a race, and you got one person handing a cup, the other person telling them, keep going straight.
Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. That is the key. I wonder, I would assume under the rules, Paul Rhodes could point out to Kerry Combs, hey, he needs to dip his shoulder more. Yes. And then Kerry Combs could voice that he needs to dip his shoulder more.
Stupid.
Which kind of lays bare the insanity and stupidity of this rule. But hey, the NCAA, this is what we do. Ta-da! All right, next one from Man in Black 241. Who do you think our starting linebackers are, and do you think Tanner McCalister makes an instant impact on the defense? I'll start with the second one first. Yes, I think Tanner McCalister makes an instant impact on the defense. I think that happens, first of all, during spring ball, as he's kind of being an example to some of the younger guys and helping introduce the terminology and introduce the concepts and all that kind of stuff. But also, I had Ross Fulton on the morning show earlier, over the weekend, I think, and he thinks he's going to be that, the slot corner, cover safety, whatever you want to call that role. He thinks that's going to be Tanner McCalister's role, which is primarily a coverage role, pass first, not a, that's not a role that has run responsibilities really in this defense. So that's where he thinks, and he thinks Tanner McCalister is, there's a decent chance Tanner McCalister is the starter in that spot. So that's I think a good guess as to what's going to happen with him. As far as the starting linebackers, I think you're going to have Steel Chambers at the will, and then Mike is going to be probably between Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg. And, I think we got a similar question sometime last week about this, or ended up talking about this at some point last week, where Cody Simon has, the coaches obviously love Cody Simon. You do not have to look very far to hear someone saying positive things about Cody Simon in that building. And Tommy Eichenberg's the same thing. Cody Simon never quite looked right last fall, and then missed the Rose Bowl because he was having, surgery for an injury. And it was like, okay, well, it turns out he's been hurt all year. So maybe when he didn't look great all year, it was because he was hurt literally all season. So they obviously believe in him because they were trying to keep him out there. They want, I think I'm interested to see what a 100% Cody Simon looks like, because I think there's a possibility a 100% Cody Simon wins that Mike job. But, you've got a couple good options there with Simon and Eichenberg. And then, do we want to project a Sam? Paulie Nateote, if he's healthy, sure. I don't know how much you're really going to see the Sam this year. So then do they kick now Teote inside to be a Mike as well? Or is it just like, well, you're going to play this very narrow role. We play a very specific kind of team. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, and for the Sam position, are they looking for a run stopping Sam or just a bigger Tanner McCalister? Mm-hmm. and sure, there will be some goal line situations where you have Palaie now Ote or Mitchell Melton or who knows. But I'm scrolling through here to see the starting linebacker, middle linebacker Tommy Eichenberg started the first 3 games, and then he started the Rose Bowl. Cody Simon started every other game and was like never really healthy for it. And so I'm with you. I really wonder what he can do when he's healthy, because I don't think he was starting for nothing. You know, they really like what he could do. Now, you know, he rarely looked great, but it's hard to unfair to judge him based on what we saw last year, because he had the bad shoulder, which is you know, pretty key to being a linebacker. Tommy Eichenberg, I thought, you know, is his Utah game very good, and he was getting better as the season went on. Is that Utah game the exact kind of offense that suits him? Absolutely. Is it the a tough Borland Army kind of situation? Perhaps, where it's like right up his alley, so he's going to look good. But I think that's going to be an incredible battle in the spring and in the fall. And I don't know that anything is going to change in terms of, like, I think they will still probably rotate. And I'd be interested in getting Jim Knowles' thoughts on that as well. And Coy McFarland, the I believe he's a grad assistant who handled the linebackers essentially for Oklahoma State in the bowl game, and also coached them while Knowles was doing all of his coordinatorly duties. But yeah, I think that battle with those two is going to be something to watch. And then you know, where is Court Williams? Where is Chip Trainum? Where is CJ Hicks? You know, I thought it was interesting. CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers both said they're starting out at will, and of course you would expect CJ Hicks to do that. But I thought the Gabe Powers thing is interesting, and the fact that they're just putting everybody on the inside makes me wonder, like, is there an outside? And if there is, I guess they feel pretty confident with who they have, even though you don't. There's not a lot of evidence as to what you have, because one of those guys is perhaps a running back. Yeah,
and the tricky thing is you're changing the defense, the scheme of the defense a little bit. So and this is not a complete overhaul. This is I think the roles they're looking for are going to be similar to the roles they were looking for last year as well. But you're changing the scheme of the defense. You're potentially changing how often some of those roles are going to be on the field, and you're adding in the freshmen, and I think you sort of assume the freshmen are not going to be starters right away, so that you kind of set them aside. But, you have Steel Chambers, who, took on a gradually bigger role last year. You have the Cody Simon injury thing, which is kind of like makes him a little bit of a question mark in terms of, like, what does he look like when he's healthy? And you add in Chip Trainum, who's a transfer and also hasn't played the position before, and it's like, I don't want to assume that he's going to start this, game one, because he hasn't played linebacker since high school. So, how long is it going to take him to get up to speed on all this stuff? And obviously he's in for spring ball and all that kind of stuff, so that'll help. But there's a long way to go, both in terms of, the physical play, but also just learning the defense and learning the role and getting all your technique down. And there's a lot of stuff that could go right or wrong between now and the Notre Dame game for Chip Trainum. So, he's in the mix there, but I wouldn't necessarily have him penciled in yet, just because there's so many questions. He could absolutely earn the starting job, but there's a lot of stuff that could change between now and then as well. Last one from @DogsAreBack. Need some more simple recipes for the air fryer. You nailed the wings 1 month ago. Tony, a listener thinks you have good food opinions. I'm just going to sit this one out. I'm just in shock.
Well, I'm confused about this one as well. I thought maybe he was talking. Did you give a wings air fryer recipe? Do you have an air fryer?
I do. I have never used an air fryer. We got an air fryer for Christmas that we have not used yet, which we'll have to explore it at some point. And this being Superb Owl Week, I feel like maybe we look into that for some food for the footballs on Sunday. But I have not yet explored the space of the air fryer, so I'm gonna have to defer to you on this one.
Well, defer away, because we got ours about the same time. I've used it once, and it cooked some chicken breasts in it. But the thing that scares me is it's something I'm using for the very first time, and I'm cooking chicken, so I don't want to die. I don't want to get sick. And the difference, the amount of difference between one recipe and the next in terms of how long to cook something and the temperature is really concerning. Because why should I need 385 for 40 minutes if this guy says 360 for 25 minutes of work? These things don't mesh. And so I went, as you might suspect, Tom, I side on the air of caution, on the side of caution with the well doneness of the chicken breast that I cooked, because I was just afraid, and it wasn't great, so I haven't used it since. I will eventually get back to it, but I have no recipes. Perhaps he was listening to a different show, in which case, don't ever do that.
Except for the morning scoop.
Thank you for credit. Yes, perhaps that's where it was, Tom. You had an air fryer chef on the morning scoop that I forgot about.
You're also allowed to listen to Big Knee Kickoff. You're also allowed to listen to Around the Oval. You're also allowed to listen to Gives in the Bank. I mean, those are all fantastic shows. Strongly recommended. I knew there was something wrong here when it was like, I mean, he's not talking to me because I have not given an air fryer recipe. It's like, well, it must be Tony. By process of elimination, it must be Tony. So, but it really threw me, and now it's like making sense. Okay, so he was mistaken. Okay, now my world is back in orbit. Tony is overcooking food, and no one respects his food opinions. It's like, okay, good. Thank you. I was in a very uncomfortable, uneasy place. Like, have I slipped through into some parallel universe? No, good. Okay, we are here. Tony, you remember in Lost when you have to have your constant, the one thing that keeps you grounded in your reality. Tony, your terrible food opinions are my constant. So thank you. You are what keeps me grounded in this crazy world of ours.
Have you seen about this Taco Bell Taco Pass?
What? No. Tell me more.
Tom, you should have known the question was there's a problem when the second sentence has the word nailed and wings. Like, I don't do wings, and I certainly didn't get anything right about food. Like, you should have known at that point that something was off. So any other insults you would like to throw my way?
I assumed he meant nuggets when he said wings. Assumed that was a typo, but
boneless wings are not nuggets, Tom.
I think we're done here.
All right, let's go. That'll do it for this episode. As Tom said, go listen to all of those podcasts that he mentioned. They are all easy on the ears, easy on the eyes. What am I going to say? Thank you all for joining us today. We do appreciate you guys. Hey, if you want, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating or review, iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now, or whichever platform you use. It does help us. We do appreciate it. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.